Battle Through the Heavens, Grand World. Chapter 126 Dark Surge. When the morning of the third day arrived, the crisp sound of a bell echoed in the ears of all the apothecaries in the Apothecary Guild. When the bell rang, all the apothecaries in the Apothecary Guild instantly became lively. All of them tidied their clothes and prepared to register. Xiao Yan, who heard the bell, put on his clothes, pushed open the door and walked out. There were already many alchemists in the corridor, led by their respective leaders to the registration place. Ji Yun was also standing outside. Bai Qian, who had not seen him for 3 days, stood beside him. When she saw Xiao Yan come out, the latter smiled faintly. When Fu Zan ran out of the room excitedly, Ji Yun coughed lightly and led the 3 downstairs. Today, we finally know that those genius alchemists are here. Looking at the bustling crowd around him, Xiao Yan couldn't help but feel a burning sensation in his heart. After consuming all 4 green pattern pills in the past 3 days, Xiao Yan had successfully advanced to the 2nd monarch spirit. He had even touched the boundary of the 3rd monarch spirit. Naturally, there were advantages and disadvantages as well. Because of the continuous consumption of green pattern pills, ordinary green pattern pills were no longer useful to him. I wonder what grade of medicine pill I can refine now. He could feel the origin monarch key filling his body. Xiao Yan was also uncertain in his heart. He did not dare to make a conclusion so easily. It should not be a problem to refine a grade 4 5-star medicine pill. As for a 6-star medicine pill, Xiao Yan could not guarantee that he could successfully refine it. Under Ji Yun's lead, the few of them followed the crowd and passed through the square, entering a large palace that had never been opened before. Looking at the 400+ alchemists in the hall, Xiao Yan turned his head and casually looked around. For a moment, he also found some acquaintances. Li Lin, Fu King of Mercenary Corps, and Yu Qiang, who had been knocked unconscious by Xiao Yan's punch, were all standing in the hall with their teacher or leader. As expected of an alchemist. It seems like he has recovered. Xiao Yan's eyes swept across the gloomy face of Yu Qiang in the distance and chuckled. As his gaze shifted, he looked elsewhere. When his gaze shifted to a corner of the hall, Xiao Yan's brows suddenly raised, and then the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. There, the blue-haired youth who had met Xiao Yan before was smiling with one hand on his back. With the folding fan in his other hand, he looked at all the alchemists in the hall with a smile on his face. Behind him, there were only 2 people who looked similar to him. When the blue-haired young man's eyes met Xiao Yan's, the former sneered disdainfully, then looked elsewhere. When Xiao Yan saw this, he also laughed in his heart. He became more and more curious about the blue-haired youth's strength. Buzz. A moment later, the sound of a bell resounded across the large hall. Everyone involuntarily quietened down, after which, everyone saw 3 old men slowly walking up to the tall platform in front of everyone. When the various city leaders below saw this, they led their own team members and consciously stood in front of the old man. They seemed to have some sort of order. I think all of you are very familiar with me. I am the chairman of Spiritual Sky City's Alchemist Guild, Li Daoyuan. Let's not talk about anything else. Today is the registration day of pill competition. The official competition will be held 2 days later. At that time, the information of the contestants below will be provided. You can use these 2 days to understand your opponent in detail. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will be able to fight 100 battles without losing a single battle. The leader of the 3 elders, an old man with white hair and beard, said with a hearty smile. After that, he waved his hand and over 40 registrators came out from the back of the hall. Everyone must abide by the rules and not cause any trouble. If anyone offends this rule, they will be disqualified from the pill competition. After introducing the registration process, Li Daoyuan waved his sleeve and spoke in a deep voice. After which, he nodded to the other 2 old men and left first. The remaining 2 old men sat on the stage and maintained the order of registration. The process of registration was far more complicated than Xiao Yan had expected. One needed to extract the age of the blood medium and test the strength of one's soul. A person would need at least 5 minutes to complete the entire procedure. No wonder so many registrators are needed. It's really troublesome. Xiao Yan looked around. Everyone was waiting for the registration in boredom. The order of registration started according to the previous year's pill competition ranking. Xiao Yan and the others were naturally placed last. After the people in the hall left one after another, it was finally Xiao Yan and the other two's turn. However, what surprised Xiao Yan was that the blue-haired youth and the others also started to register slowly and leisurely. This guy, Xiao Yan muttered to himself. He then whispered to Bai Qian, who was at the front of the line, last year's pill competition. The last place in the mercenary corps was that one. Bai Qian pondered for a moment. She said softly, it should be the mercenary corps of Wushan City in Lanning County. What's wrong? Xiao Yan shook his head and asked in surprise, why isn't it the mercenary corps of Spirit Sky City? Bai Qian laughed and said, you think too highly of the mercenary corps. Not all the mercenary corps have the ability to support alchemists. There were so many teams participating in the competition, but only 7 or 8 teams belonged to the mercenary corps. Those who dared to come were all extraordinary. Last time, there were only 7 or 8 teams that belonged to the mercenary corps. The Spirit Sky City and the mercenary corps from the Wushan City were ranked last in the competition. As the mercenary corps, it was not a big deal for them to win the competition. The Spirit Sky City's Alchemist Guild was a little unreasonable. As he spoke, Fu Zan had already announced his name. Bai Qian hurriedly withdrew her mind and threw herself into the examination. Turning her head, she saw that the blue-haired youth also stood up and left with his 2 followers who had already finished the examination. They swaggered out. After the blue-haired young man left, the registrar hurriedly came to the stage and handed the list to an old man with a shocked expression. The latter followed his instructions and saw the blue-haired young man's test results. His expression changed slightly and opened his mouth. The old man left his seat with a solemn expression and walked to the back hall. While Xiao Yan was wondering, Bai Qian had finished the test. Xiao Yan quickly calmed his mind and stood in front of the registrar. Release your soul power. The registrar's tone was emotionless. At the same time, he picked up a new silver needle and said, give me your hand. Xiao Yan did as he was told. All of his soul power flowed out from between his eyebrows. The registrar closed his eyes. After carefully feeling it for a moment, he nodded. His cold tone changed a little. Early stage alien realm soul. As he spoke, the silver needle had already pierced through Xiaoyan's palm. A drop of blood was instantly absorbed by the silver needle after it flowed out. The blood was dripped into the special device beside him. A moment later, a few eye-catching words appeared on the crystal ball in front of the device. 8 years. The registrar was stunned when he saw the big words on the crystal ball. He looked at Xiao Yan in disbelief. His face was filled with shock. Ji Yun, who was beside him, was also shocked when he saw it. He suddenly remembered what Wei Jun had told him. This guy seemed to have advanced to the fighting monarch of lower realm. This kid, how did he pass the 3-step soul transfer? Ji Yun looked at Xiao Yan with shock in his eyes. He had vaguely seen the danger of the 3-step soul transfer in the ancient books. It was an act that could kill anyone. Without the help of an expert, it was impossible to succeed. Seeing the surprised expression on the registrar's face, Xiao Yan looked at the number in the crystal ball and immediately understood. He then sighed. He had been in the Great World for almost 9 years. It was not far from the 15-year deadline of the Holy Rank trial. Luckily, he was not far from the Yunluo Academy. He would definitely be able to reach the appointed time according to the stipulated time. After recording Xiaoyan's data, the registrar hesitated for a moment. Seeing Ji Yun bringing Xiao Yan and the other 2 out, he ran to the stage and handed the list to the last elder. The old man was looking at the data of the blue-haired young man in his hand and was deep in thought. Suddenly, he saw another registrar take a list. Sighing lightly, the old man took it over to take a look. His expression instantly became extremely interesting. Then, as if he had thought of something, he raised his head and looked at Ji Yun and the others who were about to leave. He said in a clear voice, "Participant, Xiao Yan. I have something to discuss with you." Chapter end. Hi guys, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.